So my name is Karen Bernard. I run Even & Star Vision Designs. So part of my business is consultant contract work and fashion textile work as well for Indigenous people. So I've worked 24 years in social justice in every aspect, from human trafficking, mental health, Indian residential school, Indian day school, victims of the courts, homelessness, poverty, family violence, sexualized violence, etc. So I did that for a number of years, and in 2022 of April, I decided, I think it's time to leave the office and figure out what I want to do. So I did, and then I registered my business, and it became this name. And the name came from my traditional name. So my traditional name is Even & Star Woman. So then I said, the name of my company should be called something with Even & Star. So anyway, I called it Even & Star Vision Designs. And the reason because Vision Designs, because I had to vision what somebody would tell me about a piece of work they wanted done, whether it's a jacket or whether it's a ribbon skirt or a peak cap, what would that vision look like? And then I had to take their story and put it down. Really? Yeah, so that's part of what I do now. And it's just grown from that to also becoming a published author with Nelson Education in Toronto. So I do children's legends and stories, but now I'm doing them from grade primary to grade 12 now. I have my publisher working with me now, not my publisher, my illustrator. And I'm also a national speaker, trainer on sexualized violence in regards to the commercial exploitation of children.
We always find that every entrepreneur has that one moment where they have to change their direction of life and start something to help benefit the world. When you created Evening Star, what was that one moment that you knew you had to make that switch?
The moment came for me when I had to make that switch in my career was not burnout, but it was starting to become burnout in the office of 20, you've been working over 20 years in an environment of toxic subjects, not people, just the subjects. And when you combine the subjects of the work that you're doing, and then you have the staff and you have the clientele, it's a lot to work with. So finally I started to separate it when I decided to walk away from the office. So I still do the subjects, I still do the human trafficking, I still do all these horrible social justice issues, but at an advocacy level. So I don't work with the individuals anymore so much, but I do advocacy work now. So I do a lot of the gender-based work. I do national women's leadership work. I'm more about empowering the women regardless of their issues or who they are or what's going on with them. So treating everybody as an equal. So I decided, in that year, 2022, that it has to be more than, more than an institution, I guess, the way the work was, I guess, because it always fell into some kind of organization. So now I'm not an organization, I'm me, but it doesn't mean I couldn't take that work with me and still say, yeah, I'm still Karen Bernard, I'm still the speaker, I'm still the voice. So that's one of the things that I come to realize was that there is value to me, there is value to my voice, and I don't need an organization to hold me anymore. And I had all my connections, I had all my partners. So as soon as I left that office, people were already messaging me and mailing me and calling me. Karen, we heard you're going to be leaving the office. We have some work. Are you interested in doing this topic? Are you interested in doing that topic? So I'm also doing research for another organization too on accessibility and disability as well. So there's a lot of things that have come my way that you shut one door and then the other one's like then opening the floodgates. And then everything just came right into my lap.
Could you maybe list off some of the services that you provide?
And so of course I provide consultation work in regards to design wear. So if somebody wants a ribbon skirt or they want a peak cap, which is what we call the guinea squish, then we would talk about what that would look like.
How did the peak cap workshop develop?
It developed in, the first one I believe was 2016. We had some funding, me and another co-worker in Escazone. And I was working for Escazone Mental Health Services. So I was a resolution health support worker at the time, working with survivors of residential school and descendants. So at that time, that was my role. We had some funding, so they said, hey, we should try to make some peak caps. I'm like, okay. And we knew Jane Meter was the only elder that knew how to make them. So Jane came in. It was 4 sessions over a month to make this peak cap because it incorporated the design work, then the beading, and the sewing, and then the assembly in all these areas. So I did it, I'm following Jane, I'm listening to everything she's telling us to do, cut out this and do that and do that. And I finished my first one. So I was very proud, like, oh my God, it's beautiful, and got it all done. And I went with her for a few more workshops to assist her because we were funding her through my program. So everywhere she went, I had to go with her. So I was helping her out, and she's, Karen, you're going to be my assistant. So I would help her. And finally, I'm doing a lot of the work, because I was loving it, and I enjoyed doing it. And I was doing all the preparation, talking with people. If they were stuck, I'm assisting them. And I think we did 3 workshops in total. Then I got a call from another community. Karen, can you come in and do a peak workshop with us? I don't know, I said, if I can do that, because I have to ask my elder first. So I told Jane, I said, another community is asking me to come in to do the peak cap workshop. Can I do that? Of course you can. I'm like, okay. And I did my first workshop, I believe it was in 2017, I believe, in a community. And I believe it had eight elders, I believe. And because elders sometimes have a hard time with their vision and stuff, we didn't use the little beads. We had to, we graduated to a little bigger bead so that it was easier for people to do beadwork. One of the things I've come to realize, and I'm not sure how many I've done, by the way, I've done a numerous amount of PCAP workshops since then. Even during the pandemic, we started one. It was for our families of the missing and murdered. So when we talk about the ribbon skirts having a story, the PCAPs that we helped the families design were to represent their family members. One of them is amazing. One PCAP, and I just have to talk about this one PCAP. It was a woman lost her 3 children in a house fire. And I was 6 years old at the time, and those children were my friends. We played with them every day. They were only about half a mile from us. And something happened at the home that night that caused a fire. The children were hiding somewhere in the home, and the parents were trying to fend off the person that was trying to intrude their home, and just things got a little chaotic. The design work that this aunt did, even though the aunt is in her 70s, 80s, was a beautiful PCAP where she put angel wings, and she did some beadwork and felt work, and she created the little girl, the little boy, and the other little boy on this piece. And I can show you pictures of that after.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And presented it to her sister for Christmas. So the sister has this memory of her children in a shadow box, this beautiful PCAP, because she said, I'll never wear it, but I'm going to hold it. And one day I remember I told her, I said, we need to get them professionally photographed. But hers wasn't professionally photographed at the time, I don't think. And I can't remember, but anyways, she ended up, said, I can't bring it. I don't want to take it out of the box, of the shadow box. I said, you don't have to, I said. We'll photograph you with you holding it. Really? I said, yeah. So she held that shadow box on her lap, and she had the most beautiful smile on her face of her holding the memory of her children. So the PCAPs and whatever we're doing is always creating some form of healing for our families, for our people, for our women, children. There's always something in it that's going to create peace and calmness in somebody. So that was one of the things. So and it wasn't only that community. There was Wagobah community. It was Member 2, Shubenacadie, Indian, Millbrook, and Halifax, where we did the project for these families to create PCAPs to commemorate their families. So in Member 2 and Wagomah, we have commemoration parks for the families to go to, and we partner with communities here and partner with people in Sydney, in Member 2 to create these beautiful parks. So that was one of the big stories of me teaching the PCAPs. But also what we've done, and this is something I've noticed, just like the education system, when people are struggling, when your students are struggling. I had to help one elder, and I'll never forget this, and this is when I realized I have to use the two-eyed seeing into this whole way of doing things now. I remember she came in with her piece that was beaded, and she was starting her beadwork. And she was frustrated when she says, Karen, I don't like this, it's crooked. Can you take all this off for me? Sure, I said. So I took all those little beads off and we got rid of them and she's going to restart. So I gave it back to her. So dinner time came that day and she's gone. And I told the other participants, where did she go? They said, oh, she went home and she gave up and she was frustrated and she went home crying. And I'm like, oh no, that's not good. My elder went home crying. So I said, I'm going to go see her. So I went to go see her and I asked her, I said, what happened? Did I do something? Did I upset you? She says, no, she says. I couldn't tell you, I have bad arthritis. And she didn't have the flexibility to make a beautiful piece of beadwork. And she didn't have the courage to tell me because she was shamed by it. And I said, oh my goodness, I said, I wish I'd known. But I said, don't worry about it. We can solve this problem. I have something for you. And she says, really? I said, yeah. The design that you were trying to make, I have a machine that's going to cut that design out, and we're going to iron that design onto your PCAP. You won't even need to do beadwork. So we're going to iron this down, and then we're just going to sew it together. So creating some kind of accommodations for people to do the beadwork, whether it's visual, whether it's their dexterity. I also have other ways of people doing things. So the elder that went home, it's heat transfer vinyl.
Okay.
So the heat transfer vinyl is what I use when they can't do other ways of doing things. Or we're doing a thing called hot fix now. So hot fix is like a little heat gun. So you have your little gem on the tip of that little gun and it adheres to the fabric. Okay. So they're able to do things like that. We have fabric glue and gem tack, I think it's called. So adhering gems to the fabric as well, that it'll stay. There's embroidery now. There is this pattern just doing the heat transfer only. So there's many ways to do it now when we only thought there was one way, and that was beading. So if you couldn't do any of these pieces, if you had to only bead, and we had many people that could not bead, that wouldn't come back. They didn't come back. They said, that's okay, I'm good, I'm not going to come back. And then they don't finish it. So now that we've incorporated multiple ways of doing it, everybody's like, oh, I want to do it that way. I can do it this way. I can do it that way. Accommodations is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you think that if the youth becomes a little bit more knowledgeable in their own culture, that it could help benefit the growth and opportunities in the business world?
I think so.
Okay.
And one of the things that now, and I know it's one of the things about culture, and I've noticed it because I've seen people go through it. When they grasp back to their culture, especially their culture, their language, and if they're having struggles in life, whether it's with addictions or just self-esteem or whatever the issue could be, this is part of their healing. It's huge. I didn't know my culture growing up. I knew nothing.
The opportunities that Mi'kmaq individuals who are entrepreneurs, do you see them holding value for tourists that come here on the cruise ships, people that come to these cultures and have something to offer to them?
Yeah, so when we have people come to, and I have to put it out there. So in our communities, every community, you'll see tourists driving through our reserve from Idaho or Texas, or because they want to see what the Indians look like and how we live, right? And that's what it was. That was very common, because that's just common, because everybody was curious. Do they live in teepees? Do we still live on the sides of the roads? Do we live along the rivers? You know, just, and it's not ignorance. Well, it is ignorance because you don't know. You only know what you hear and what you don't want to look out to find out about yourself, like find out who they really are. One of the things I think in regards to tourism, we have a cultural trail right now in one of our communities. And at the beginning of that cultural trail is the history of residential school. So and it's an open trail for tourists to come into. So if a tourist member comes down to this thing, they'll see this first monument about Indian residential school and who those victims were that attended those areas. Then further down, you'll see another one with the missing and murdered monument. And you'll see that little piece. Then you'll go further down, there'll be a garden of medicines. But there'll be people from our communities that work there that do talk to the tourists and tell them, you know, this is what we're doing, this is what we have, this is who we are as Indigenous people. We will introduce you to some cooking. We will teach you how to make something. So the Guinea squidge, I was asked if I could come to, if a non-Indigenous person can make it and wear it. I said, no, you can't, I said. But there is a little workshop I do that you make a 3-inch mini Guinea squidge, I call it, which you put into a frame, and it's a little piece that you can make and take with you. But I will not teach you to make the one that I would wear. I just don't think it's right, and it's the same thing as me giving you a headdress and having you put that on. I won't do that. So I've been asked to go off community to do that, and I said, no, sorry, I'm not doing that. But I will teach you about what it is and why we wear them, why they're designed this way, who they benefit, who they are for.
Ego igande ha ego gwandu dana he. Hey, ego igande